Hello everybody, this is Miranda the Hybrid and welcome to Tutorial Tuesday. I'm going over perspective, the very base concepts of perspective. We're going to learn how to put like squares and cylinders in perspective and how to draw architecture, stuff like that. It all goes to the very same base principles. Before we start, I'd like to give a thanks to my Patreons as per usual. You guys are paying for my internet bill. And also thank you to everybody who sent in a picture for Jordan's art memorial. I have literally hundreds of emails to go through and it's just taking a lot of time, along with the fact that I work a 20-hour-a-week job on top of making these videos and the webtoon and writing my books and doing personal art. So if I haven't replied to your email yet, it's there. Don't worry, I've gotten your art. I just haven't had a chance to actually write something to you. Without further ado, let's draw. So the first thing you want to do when making something in perspective is put in your horizon line. Essentially what a horizon line is this is the land and this is the sky. The horizon line is just where the two of them meet. This is also where things are going to go backwards in perspective. Now, when we talk about the horizon line, we have to talk about vanishing points. It gets a little bit confusing. Some people might say that we see in 2-point perspective, but that's not exactly correct. When we talk about 1, 2, and 3-point perspective, we're talking about representing a 3D image onto a 2D plane. Humans kind of see in 1-point perspective, meaning we're looking at something and it's all coming to us, like this. So in reality, we kind of see in 1-point perspective, but when we represent things on a page, we want to use 2-point perspective. Or sometimes 3, but 3-point perspective can get a little bit confusing. Before I jump into that, let's go straight to it. So what are these points of perspective I'm talking about? Well, if you want to do 1-point perspective, you actually want to make it in the center. By 1-point perspective, I mean that our vanishing point, everything is going to be converging onto this one spot right in the center. Imagine that you're standing here, just a little itty-bitty human in a very big trench coat. Itty-bitty human, big trench coat, tiny butt. And you're looking straight over here to the horizon line and to the vanishing point. Everything to you, like say there's a road disappearing into the distance, is going to come to you on either side. So when you do 1-point perspective, you actually should center it. Because if you put it off to the side, it would look unnatural. Say we do have this 1-point perspective though. Let's draw a vertical line through it so that we can start calculating where everything's going to be. So obviously we have our little street here. I'm going to use the drawing guide just so it's a little bit easier to draw straight lines. So this is the line that your character is standing on, right? As things move further away from them, the lines are going to get closer and closer and closer together. Until you meet the horizon line. I just kind of got lazy with my lines there. So now you have your ground plane worked out. What about the sky plane? Same exact thing. I'm going to start with small lines, and then they're going to get further and further and further apart as you get closer and closer and closer to yourself in perspective. Just like that. And let me darken the horizon line just so we know where it is. So now, these lines are representing how far away or how close things are to you. What happens if you have a building? Well, in 1-point perspective, which remember you should center, let's imagine that there is a building starting right over here on the edge of the sidewalk. That building is going to go up and up and up. Now, how are we going to calculate where it stops, and how are we going to calculate how that perspective works? You should take this furthest edge of the building, you should stretch your vanishing point to the tip of it, but continue it on, all the way up. And that line will give you where you're supposed to stretch the front part of the building to. So now, you have the base of your building, and how high it is. What about the sides of the building? In 1-point perspective, the sides of the building are just going to be flat like this. Then you can draw down again, and suddenly you have a building in 1-point perspective. All of the windows are going to follow the same rule. Let's try to bisect the building. So we'll draw a line right to about here, and this line here is your bisecting line. You can do the same thing with windows. Just keep drawing those lines upwards. Now this is a lot harder to do if you don't have a computer program, but it's still possible. You just have to make your lines extremely light. And suddenly, bam, we have some windows. So that's the basics of drawing something like a building in 1-point perspective. How do you place a character though? Just like the building, your character has a certain height. Now let's move the character over here. I have no idea what that's supposed to look like. I don't know what this is. It's an Enderman. Let's put it that way. And so your Enderman is standing on a certain point. So draw that point where it's standing from the base of its feet. Now its head comes to a certain height. Draw that line back into perspective. Using these side horizontal lines, place the feet of your character again. So if he's standing over here, the head will only come to the top of that line. And that's how you draw somebody further away in perspective. You just have to use this vanishing point. This vanishing point is extremely, extremely important. Vanishing point, top of the head, bottom of the head. Draw the line into your vanishing point. That's how you do it. Now what about 2-point perspective? Let's draw a horizon line again. The only difference between 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective is that there are 2 vanishing points. Let's put one over here, and let's thicken our horizon line so we don't get confused. I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did before, and draw some lines coming towards you in perspective, and draw the skybox. Instead of having a top and a side that stays consistent, now it's only the sides that stay consistent in a tall object that's flat. Because now, both of your sides are going to be vanishing in both directions. Let's do a cube for an example. Imagine that the front corner of the cube is right over here. You're going to draw one line coming this way, from one point of perspective, and another line coming this way, in another point of perspective. The only consistent thing at this point is how tall one side of the cube is going to be. Now what you're going to do is draw the other point of perspective coming this way, and the other one to meet it on top. Now you've got the sides of your cube. We're going to draw one of the lines over here, and since it's a cube, and since it's facing us at a 90-degree angle, you're going to draw another line coming this way until it hits your other perspective point. Right over here, and right over here. Now you're going to draw the other edge. And here's where you can put in your thick lines. So that's a cube in 2-point perspective, with one edge of it coming above the horizon line and one edge of it going below. What about an object that is entirely below the horizon line, such as something you're looking down on? Again, let's use the cube as the example. Here's the top and bottom of the cube, but this time I'm going to put it closer to one perspective point than the other. Now let's take our lines and draw them. One coming this way for the top, one coming this way for the bottom, one coming this way for the top of that end, and one coming this way for the bottom of that end. You can kind of use your imagination in a way and decide maybe we want to make this a really long prism, for instance. So I'm going to make it longer going this direction than the other one. And then I'm going to make this the far edge of that. I'm going to draw this line coming there to hit the top of the rear part of our prism, and this line coming this way to hit the other rear part of the top of the prism. And now, blammo, we can draw in the rest of our lines. Just like that. And if you wanted to flip it over and make it come across on top of the sky, same thing, just as easy. Let's do it again. Now, when it comes to stuff like spheres in perspective, you really don't have to worry about it. But what about something like a cylinder? So for the base of the cylinder, we want to make a square, just like we did before, but let's make it super duper light. Essentially, we need to make a tall rectangular prism again. Now what I'm doing here is a tiny bit tricky for this particular cylinder. I'm drawing essentially something coming towards us in a 1-point perspective, but on a 2-point perspective plane. Now this was a headache to figure out when I realized what I was trying to do, so let me try explaining how to do it on the paper. We draw the baseline down here, which is the bottom of the square we want to create to make this cylinder. Now what I'm going to do is draw the lines of perspective coming in that direction. Now this is the center point. There are some very advanced ways to calculate how this should work, but basically I'm going to eyeball it. I'm going to extend this center line to go backwards about as far as I think it should be lying, draw the rear line, and then flatten it on this surface. Realistically, this is 1-point perspective. And instead of trying to go through the entire mess all over again, I'm just going to mirror it upside down. So what we've created here is a very good base for drawing our cylinder. What you want to do, within the squares on the bottom and the top that we've created, is make a sphere. From the very front, a sphere in a box looks something like this. You have it touching all four corners. So knowing that, try putting it in perspective. Make lines across the box if it helps you. I've got 1, I've got 2, I'll get a little bit bigger as it comes towards you, 3, 4. I have 1 on the bottom. Now you just want to do the exact same thing again, but on the top. And now that you have those two, you connect the outermost edges. And then you thicken the fronts. And that's how to do more rounded objects in perspective. And since it is in perspective, as things go farther away from you, as they curve away from you, their lines get closer together. So let's just quickly demonstrate this. It would look something like that to show that it's being curved. And that's actually the start of how you know how to draw a body in perspective. This is kind of a difficult lesson, but it's very vital that you know how to do this. I think next week I'm going to be teaching how to draw bodies in perspective, because that's extremely important and very highly requested. Hopefully at the moment this will help you lay out landscapes, cities, rooms, everything like that. Even the rooms have a perspective point. Always follow the perspective point. The vanishing point, that's what it's called. So I hope this helped you guys. As per usual, drink your water, get your sleep, chase your dreams, and believe in yourself. I will see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.